Picture yourself driving down the highway. Dashboard lights, flash, oil pressure warning, tire pressure alert, check engine light, fuel level indicator, temperature gauge blinking red. You can't process them all, you pull over. Overwhelmed. This is budgeting for most Americans. We track everything. Every coffee purchase logged. Every grocery receipt categorized. Every streaming subscription noted. Researchers call this comprehensive accounting. Psychologists discovered that accounting decisions, such as which category to assign a purchase, can affect the perceived attractiveness of choices. But here's what nobody tells you. This system guarantees failure. Why? Because you run out of mental fuel before month's end. Psychologist Roy Baumeister spent decades studying a phenomenon he termed decision fatigue. Researchers estimated that an American adult makes 35,000 decisions daily. Each decision drains what Baumeister described as our mental reservoir, a finite resource powering self-control. Here's the remarkable part. Studies found that judges' decisions were strongly influenced by how long it had been since their last break, with favorable rulings dropping from approximately 65% to nearly zero within each session, then returning abruptly to 65% after breaks. Even experienced judges couldn't maintain decision quality, their mental resources depleted. Now consider your typical evening. You've navigated workplace decisions all day. Emails answered, meetings attended, problems solved. By evening, you're mentally exhausted. Then you open your budgeting spreadsheet. 47 transactions await categorization. Should that restaurant charge count as dining out or business expense? Was that purchase groceries or household supplies? When mentally depleted, people become reluctant to make trade-offs and become what researchers call cognitive misers, hoarding their energy. You default to whatever requires least effort. The budget gets abandoned. This isn't weakness, it's biology. Richard Thaler won a Nobel Prize for understanding something peculiar about human psychology. People tend to code, categorize, and evaluate economic outcomes by grouping their assets into any number of non-fungible, non-interchangeable mental accounts. Money isn't money, it's different depending on where it lives in your mind. Thaler illustrated this with a simple example. Most people will travel 20 minutes to save $5 on a $15 calculator, but not on a $125 jacket. Same $5, different mental categories, different decisions. We already practice mental accounting unconsciously. Birthday money feels different from paycheck money. Tax refunds get spent differently than regular income. Found cash vanishes faster than earned wages. Traditional budgeting fights against this natural tendency. It demands we track every dollar equally, treating all money as fungible, completely interchangeable. Mental accounting research suggests a different approach, helping employees think about savings in different buckets. Goals, envelopes, jars can create an additional emotional incentive. Instead of fighting our psychological tendencies, we can harness them. Traditional budgeting operates like this. Track everything flowing out. Whatever remains becomes savings. Reverse tracking flips the equation. Identify what must stay. Route everything else to savings automatically. The method requires 3 steps. First, identify your non-negotiables. Most people have 3 to 5 major fixed expenses: housing costs, transportation expenses, insurance premiums, debt payments, utilities. These expenses arrive monthly regardless of your attention. Calculate their total. Let's say $4,000 monthly. Second, add a small buffer for variable essentials. Food typically costs between $500 and $800 monthly for most households. Personal care items, another $100, perhaps $200 for medical needs and prescriptions. Round up generously, call it $1,200 for these categories combined. Third, subtract these totals from monthly income. Whatever remains routes automatically to savings. Not eventually, not hopefully, automatically. Here's what makes this powerful. Research found that automatic bill payments and systems that help manage finances allow people to stabilize their financial situation. You've eliminated 90% of tracking decisions. You've removed temptation from the equation. Your checking account holds only what's needed for necessities. Everything else lives elsewhere, earning interest, building emergency funds, growing toward long-term goals. Why does reverse tracking succeed where traditional budgeting fails? Research suggests that microinvestment can be a powerful tool for promoting saving behavior due to mental accounting, where individuals categorize their money into different mental accounts. By creating a dedicated savings account, a separate mental category, you've made spending that money psychologically difficult. The savings account isn't spending money, it's future you money. Studies found that 59% of users made regular investments, and 80% reported that automated platforms helped them save money. Automation removes the decision entirely. Consider what happens with traditional budgeting. You track a coffee purchase. You've now engaged your prefrontal cortex, the brain region managing complex decisions. You've depleted glucose, the brain's primary fuel source. Research established that acts of self-control and decision-making consume substantial glucose, thereby lowering blood glucose levels. Every tracking decision weakens your next decision. By evening, impulse control falters. The budget collapses. Reverse tracking eliminates these micro-decisions. You're not tracking that coffee. You're not categorizing that purchase. You're not depleting willpower reserves with trivial decisions. The money for necessities exists in one account. Everything else exists elsewhere. Simple, automatic, sustainable. Here's how to implement reverse tracking in 10 minutes. Open your last 3 months' bank statements. Highlight only the major recurring charges: housing, transportation, insurance, utilities, debt payments. Total these amounts, add 20% as a buffer. This becomes your necessity account funding level. Next, open a high-yield savings account at a separate institution. Critical detail: make it slightly inconvenient to access, not impossibly difficult, just inconvenient enough to create friction. Now, set up automatic transfers on payday. Your designated amount routes to the necessity account, everything else. The entire remainder transfers to savings. You're done. 10 minutes, maybe 15 if your bank's website moves slowly. What about groceries, gas, clothing, entertainment? They come from the necessity account's buffer or from accumulated savings when needed. Research implementing active choice methods found it boosted enrollment in automatic savings from payroll deductions by 31% for workers who saw this prompt during onboarding. The psychological shift matters more than perfect precision. You've reversed the default. Savings happens first, spending requires deliberate action. But what about emergencies? Emergency funds grow in your savings account. Studies found that managing tighter budgets is intrinsically more mentally taxing, so those with smaller budgets struggle more with saving. Reverse tracking builds that emergency fund automatically rather than hoping you'll find money to save. What if I run short in my necessity account? You've overestimated your necessities or underestimated true costs. Adjust next month. Transfer a bit more to necessities, transfer a bit less to savings. The system flexes. Will I obsess over my savings balance? Perhaps initially. Most people check constantly the first week, then weekly, then monthly. The novelty fades, the balance grows. You stop checking because you trust the system. How is this different from pay yourself first? Pay yourself first requires you to decide an amount and maintain discipline. Reverse tracking automates everything and removes decisions. Research showed that automatic contributions make it easier to save by automatically transferring money from checking to investment accounts regularly. What about fund money budgets traditionally fail? Because they're punitive. All restriction, no reward. Reverse tracking includes flexibility. Your necessity account buffer allows spontaneous purchases. Accumulated savings can fund larger ones. The difference: you're making conscious choices from a position of financial strength rather than unconscious drifting toward debt. Traditional budgeting promises control through comprehensive tracking. Track everything. Master every detail. Achieve financial perfection. It's exhausting. It fails. Reverse tracking embraces a counterintuitive truth: less tracking creates more savings. Research found that budgeting behavior is negatively associated with economic resources, suggesting those with limited resources actually need simpler systems. You're not tracking 47 monthly decisions, you're managing 3 to 5 non-negotiables. You're not battling decision fatigue, you're eliminating decisions. Behavioral finance finds that variables affecting economic decision-making include biases, self-control, mental accounting, savings, fairness, and attention. Reverse tracking aligns with these psychological realities rather than fighting them. Most people know what they should do financially: save more, spend less, track better. Knowledge isn't the problem. Execution is the problem. Reverse tracking solves execution. It removes friction from saving. It adds friction to spending. It works with your psychology instead of against it. 10 minutes to implement, automatic from that point forward. Your financial dashboard no longer flashes 40 warning lights. It shows 3 gauges. Simple, clear, sustainable. The question isn't whether you can afford to try this system, given that individuals experiencing decision fatigue demonstrate an impaired ability to make trade-offs and prefer passive roles in decision-making. The question becomes, can you afford not to? Your mental bandwidth is precious, your willpower is finite, your financial future is important. Stop tracking everything, start tracking what matters. Reverse the equation, automate savings. Simplify life. The 10-minute budget cleanse begins now.